This is CHSR 97.9 FM here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. This is Python's Paradise, your film and music show, and this is your host, Greg Gilbert, a.k.a. the Python Hyena. And folks, Flesh Gordon is celebrating its 45th anniversary. And I'm not a regular watcher of anything pornographic, but I do love porn parodies. I find them hilarious and entertaining. And you can't get too much better than Flesh Gordon when it comes to a parody. In fact, I prefer that over the Flesh Gordon movie, to be frank.
Oh, thank you.
Folks, I have the director of Flesh Gordon on the phone with me. I have the awesome Howard Ziehm. Did I get that right? Your last name, Ziehm?
Yes, that's right. That's right, Greg.
Okay, perfect.
You got it.
You're the first one I've heard of that had that kind of last name. So where does that come from? Where does that originate?
Well, it's actually my stepfather's name. My original name was Dittman, which I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and my mother remarried an army dentist, and he was also from Wisconsin, and his last name was Ziehm.
Okay.
And actually, I was somewhat confused when I was in school, and I was sitting in class, and they started calling out names to hand out meal tickets, and they called a Howard Dittman, but I didn't remember my old father. I mean, I didn't have a lot of contact with him. And so when I got home, I asked my mother, I said, Mom, did I used to have another daddy? And that's how it came up. And then they asked me, well, do you want to change your name permanently? And I took the name Ziehm.
It is a cool name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of distinguishable.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I came across you online there, and I was like, I got to talk, before we talk about Flesh Gordon, like you got a book out called Take Your Shame and Shove It. We Aren't Living in the Garden of Eden Anymore. And I'm going to order this book. I've got to read this because something tells me that you and I have a lot in common. This leads me to ask you to give us some of your background and what led you to Flesh Gordon and where you're come now.
Well, it's a pretty long story, but actually I was a very shy youngster, and when my father was stationed in Germany, in Erlangen, we took a vacation to Paris, and my mother was all thrilled about seeing the Palais Bergère because she thought of it as, high-kicking dancing girls, and then we went to the theater, and I could see on the by the pictures in the display box that there was a lot of closely nude girls in the show, and anyway, my mother started to have second doubts about allowing me to go see the show, and my father, who was a very religious man, he always asked me to make sure I was going to church, and at the time I always went to church. But he said, he kind of took my side, and he said, well, no, I think he should be able to go. Anyway, we went to see the show, the Follies, and, the lights went down, and all of a sudden on trapezes and on the little boxes on the side walls opened up, and in each box there was a beautiful French nude girls, or they just had G-strings on, but you couldn't tell what they were. And suddenly I got a hard on, and it was so hard. I left the theater. I couldn't stand up straight. I had to keep it covered with a program, and we got home, and and I turned my back to we were in a hotel room, and I had my own bed, of course, but I had to keep my back towards my parents because I was embarrassed that they would see, what had happened to me. And anyway, that kind of got me turned on to the excitement of seeing naked women, and then as time went on, I started stealing girly books, which were just striptease dancers and things like that, and then when I got to college. One of my professors, humanities professors, said, "Well, if you want to see real American humor, you go to the old Howard down in Scully Square." And so a couple of fraternity brothers took me down there, and I saw Irma the Body. And Irma came out on the stage, and she lifted up. She had a little Bo Peep dress on, and she lifted it up, and she had these little stripper panties on with a heart on, and she goes, "Look, I've got a heart on," and so that was quite exciting. I became an addict. In fact, I wound up going to the show almost every week while I was in school, and it eventually led me to dropping out of school.
Weren't keeping your grades up, huh?
Yeah, and and then I moved to Berkeley, and and I kept expanding my open-mindedness. And actually, MIT had a humor magazine called Voodoo, and they had just come out with an issue the semester before I got there called "Give VD to Your Girlfriend," VD for Voodoo. And it was so controversial that the school took it off the stands and locked it up in the downstairs vaults. But I had a job at the library, and and I thought I was very much against censorship, and so I took the copy out of the downstairs vaults, and I brought it back to my fraternity house, and I hope it's still there today. But anyway, then I went on to Berkeley, and I finally got laid, and I got laid by when I flunked out. I met a friend on the second floor of the. Got me a job at the air base, Edwards Air Base, or no, it wasn't, Hansen Air Base, and we're out. Another guy comes up, up to us, and we were practicing doing the twist when Chubby Checkers was coming out to do the twist, and the colonel saw us out there in the hallway, and he, gave a stern, But anyway, the fellow who joined us said, "Well, look, would you double date this weekend? I have a cousin come visiting from St. Louis, and she's still in high school. Room that she's fucking her one of her teachers, and I was still a virgin, and even though I had been trying to get over my virginity, I was being unsuccessful. And anyway, he came and he picked from the fraternity house, and I came down to he was waiting. He was going to drive us to wherever we wanted to go. And the first thing out of her mouth was, when I climbed into the back seat and joined her, she was the cutest little thing I'd ever seen in my life. And the first thing out of her mouth was, "I don't care what we do, just so it's honest." And so I said, "Well, So I said, well, look at Paul, his name was. I said, why don't you drop us off down in Scully Square? So I took her to the burlesque show at the old Howard, and she was so, so excited that when we came back, I took her back upstairs, and we started to, try to have sex. And every time I tried to have sex, I always went limp. But she didn't give me a chance to go limp. She had me in the river before I knew what was happening, and I go, oh my God, is there anything more delightful than this? Anyway, that led to me eventually going to Los Angeles, and I was becoming quite the rebel at that time, and I had teamed up with a partner to make what were called beaver movies, just girls rolling around the bed, and they couldn't spread their legs or even take their panties off at that time, and I was quite good at it. I had for all the girly magazines that I looked at, and, there were quite a few famous female photographers at the time, Bunny Yeager and comes to mind. And anyway, so I had an eye for how to pose girls for a picture, and so Bill Osco was my partner at the time, and we drove out. I had a roommate, a female roommate, a beautiful blonde girl, and I asked her if she would model for us, and she said, she was delighted to do it, and so we went out to Palm Springs, 100 miles east of L.A., and we spotted a place off the road where we could go up and shoot. It was a secluded spot. It was actually the lot where Bob Hope would eventually build his house, and we went out there, and I gave my girlfriend some black stockings. I was always from the girly magazines. I was always a fan of black lingerie and that type of thing. And she did a hell of a modeling job for us. And on the way back, she was just covered with a fur coat that we gave her, and Bill was driving a convertible, and Josie was in the back seat, and Bill kind of had a sense of humor about him, and we're going down the highway leaving Palm Springs, and he pulls up beside a semi truck driver, and Josie's in the back seat, and she spreads her legs. She had her panties on, but she spread her legs and gave the guy a flash of her, and he started going crazy with what's on here, and so then Bill would speed up and go ahead, and then the truck driver would speed up to catch up, and finally he's hanging his head out the window, and he says, "Slow down, we can all have some fun." And anyway, Bill was able to take the pictures I shot of her, and he shot them to a company called Continental Productions, and we had enough money. Eventually, Bill was always pushing for us to get into, the newest thing, and we were successful with our little beaver movies. We called it Zoco Productions, Ziehm Osco, and then he said, well, everything's going to features now, and so I made a feature. It was called a Virgin Runaway, and then that led to we needed somebody to edit the films, and I hired an editor, and the editor had a friend, Mike Benvenuti, had a friend who was with an acting group in L.A. called the Company Theater, and the Company Theater, Bill Hunt, who eventually went on to play Emperor Wang, Bill Hunt suggested we make a spoof of Flash Gordon and call it Flesh Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I liked the idea, and so we had made another hardcore movie called Mona the Virgin Nymph, and I was always very attuned to how good our films were, and but Bill told me he was going to take it over to show it to Lou Shear, who owned a string of theaters across the country, and I said, well, if you would think, I thought he would be thrown out of the office for bringing something like that over there, but Shear loved the movie, and Bill came back to the office with a check for $100,000, and I was totally shocked, and so that gave us the money to, go on and make. I made a couple other movies like that, as we were putting Flesh Gordon together, because we found a cast hired a girl named Cindy Stokes to be Dale, and an agent in town, Reb Sawitz, found an actor. He was an ex-little All-American football player, Jason Williams, to be Flesh Gordon, and we shot the movie, and we went through the $100,000 soon disappeared, but the movie was I kept making the little side films to keep money coming in, and so anyway, to make a long story short, the whole prospect took 3 years to make, and and we were all exhausted after that time, and I had to fire Ben Vinisti, who was my editor. I hired an Egyptian editor, Abbas Amin, to take over the editing, and Abbas did a wonderful job, and he pointed out where Ben Vinisti's directing was lacking. He missed a lot of reaction shots and this and that, and then we got into making the special effects, and which was going fine, but then we had a little rebellion in the special effects group, and Mike Miner, who was a real genius. Unfortunately, Mike Miner was one of the first people to succumb to AIDS, and but anyway, they came up to our office one day, and he said, "Well, we decided we didn't like the film." One of his crew was a fellow named Dennis Mirren. Dennis Mirren, would wind up years in the future with more Academy Awards than any person in Hollywood. And but anyway, they said, "Look, we'll finish Flesh Gordon, the effects for Flesh Gordon, but we don't want our names included on the credits. And before we hand you what we've shot, we want to be paid in full." And anyway, I was able to get the money together and make the transfer and get the negative, and it turned out a lot of things were missing, but a lot of the things they did was really top notch, and we had Jim Danforth who was famous for doing when dinosaurs ruled the earth. He was our animator, and Greg Jean went on to he did the models for the Flying Phallus rocket ship, and anyway, but there was a slew of problems that accompanied the making of the film. So anyway, then I finally got, was ready to show the film, in a screening, and we got a nice reaction at the MGM screening room, and I didn't think there was going to be any trouble getting the film distributed. But I had a conflict with I found out my partner had been stealing money from me all along, and he had been stashing money away in a secret bank account and stealing some prints and this and that, and so I had to get have an accountant, to serve as an intermediary, and the accountant agreed that any monies that went out from that point on, he would co-sign the checks. Fortunately, we had bought a theater called the Beverly Cinema, and which I just sold a few years ago to Quentin Tarantino.
Okay.
And anyway, but I said, look, I don't want any. I was having a hard time finding anybody to agree to distribute the film, and I had a fellow named John Lamb who was going to do it, but then John kept him and hawing, and Bill, my ex-partner, had two guys from New York, Peter Locke and Jim. And Bill. Well, Peter Locke was the main one, and I said, well, look at. I didn't want to be involved with anybody that Bill was involved with because of our out the we had. But anyway, Peter took the film to New York, and he kept, he kept calling me and said, well, look, I've shown it around, but people keep saying it's too long, it's too long, it's too long. And I said, look, it's not too long. It was only an hour and a half at that point. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, finally I got he got somebody to look at it from the Regal Theater, but the first out of the guy's mouth was, well, who would want to see that? And so that was an auspicious beginning, and but we opened it up, and we found a little theater down on 11th Street in the Village, and it was sold out for 4 weeks in a row, the midnight show. And we finally got another the Plaza Theater just up the street from the Plaza Hotel, and they said, "Well, look at we're bombing with the movie we got in there right now. It was MGM thing called That's Entertainment, I think it was called." And they said, "As soon as we got something else coming in, but you can have the theater until we throw out." That's Entertainment. And they said, oh, okay, well, we'll take it. And we opened up in the Plaza Theater. Opening night, Elton John was in the line. But I was always so shy. I didn't, go up and introduce myself. And, I was still embarrassed about what we had made. And anyway, so rather than the 3 days that we were supposed to get we played for 13 weeks excuse me, it kind of brings tears to my eyes thinking about it. Mm-hmm. But anyway, we played for 3 weeks, and we finally, once we were established in New York, we were, theaters were calling up from around the country. We opened up in Los Angeles in 2 theaters, one up on Hollywood Boulevard called the Vogue, and another one in Westwood. We had Oingo Boingo. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Oh, yeah, I've interviewed the drummer.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, Johnny Hernandez, Yep.
My God.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, anyway, we had the Oingo Boingo band was kind of a unknown, up-and-coming band, and I got them to do their act out the street in pouring rain. While people came into the theater, and anyway, we played for weeks after. We had a long run there at the UA Theater in Westwood, and we were off and running, and who would want to see that? To here we are, 45 years later, and it's still. I'm still getting a royalty check from my, from my video distributor. So anyway, that's basically the story.
Well, I was going to ask, you were growing up and looking at these magazines. Were there any actresses at the time that you fantasized about, so to speak?
Well, yeah. Well, of course, my favorite at the theater, the burlesque theater, was a dancer named the fascinating Jennifer, and whenever she was booked to play, I always went down to see her, and I discovered, here's conservative Boston, but they had a little deal with the police department, so that whenever the vice was coming in to check out the show, a little red light would go on to let the dancers know it's time to cool the show down a bit. And there was one dancer named Princess Domay, and I always got a seat right next to the runway, and she would squat down and pull her vagina apart, and that was girls showing their pubic hair and their vaginas were totally unheard of at that time, and she and she said very matter of factly, well, yeah, there's a hole down there. What did you expect to find? And I had to say to myself, well, I didn't know. we were still arguing, is the hole, in the front or in the bottom? And so she and then I got into the magazines, and there was Tempest Storm, and the girl from Texas, what was her name? I'll think of it before we leave. There was a girl in Texas who made an underground porno movie because porno was still illegal, and a candy bar. And when the director wanted Candy Bar to give a blowjob, which is now standard routine for any girl in doing porn, at that time giving a blowjob was totally unheard of, and she refused to give a blowjob. She wouldn't give a blowjob, and the little black and white movie she was called Smart Aleck. Okay. And she would eventually get arrested in Texas. She was a beautiful, beautiful girl, and they arrested her for possession of marijuana and sent her to prison for 3 years. And when she got out, she times were changing and attitudes were changing, and Texas named her one of their outstanding citizens and named her to their Hall of Fame, and where she still is today. But then as I went on, I mean, there were I met a lot of I met Jennifer Wells. I shot, and Serena has just agreed to. Serena's still around. she has become sort of the new Marilyn Monroe,
Okay.
and she's agreed to interview with an Austrian filmmaker that is doing a little documentary on me. And but anyway, yeah, there's so. Do you want me to go? I mean, I've got so many.
Oh yeah.
There were hundreds of girls, and and finally when it went. Well, when hardcore first started happening, there was a film. A Swedish film called "I Am Curious Yellow."
Yes.
And it was rumored that there was a actual shot of a couple fucking in that movie, and so there was a line around the block to get into the theater. At that point, porn was still illegal. They were showing porn. And anyway, I took my wife. We went to see it, and when the scene that purportedly had her the live sex came on, it was so grainy and black and white and went by so quick. When people came out of the theater, well, were they actually doing it, or nobody really knew if they actually saw sex or not? But it just showed, how great the demand. When you forbid, people from seeing something. Like when I was little, I was obsessed with seeing what girls hiding up there. And I did a little when I was living with my grandmother. I was 5 years old or 4 years old, I forget. And I laid down on the floor so that my grandmother would have to walk over me, and I could look up her dress to see what she was hiding up there. And my grandmother was hip to what was happening and stepped to the side and didn't let me look. And I didn't even get to see what a female, male genitals looked like until I was. My mother had, a daughter, and that was like 10 years later, and so I finally saw, and then my sisters, one of who's coming over to join me on Thanksgiving. She's 70 now, and my two sisters. I'm still very shy and very out of it as far as women and sexuality is concerned, and I had been working on a stamp collection and walking up the we were stationed in a little house. I was living in a little house in Monterey, California, that the Army was providing, and when my sisters had the door open to their room, and when I went by, they pulled their pussies open, and flashed me their the pink inside of their pussy, and I was just shocked. And, Mom, Nancy and Chris are pulling themselves apart. And my mother, if I ever hear you do something that filthy again, blah blah blah. So that was the kind of background I came out of. And, but anyway, it's kind of a fascinating story. I know I'm rambling on. I hope this is you're catching all this.
Yeah, some of the feedback on your end is a little spotty, though. I don't know what your connection is like, but I'm definitely getting you coming in as far as your voice goes, pretty clear. But one of the things that I was referring to when I asked you about actresses I met in ones in the Hollywood movies. Like, for example, back in that era, Grace Kelly would have been, I would have found fascinating. Was there anybody like that you was?
Well, I had a fascination about what was her name? this was kind of like teenage fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
I never used any of those women in any of my movies.
No.
But Yvonne DiCarlo,
Okay.
I had a little teenage crush on,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't know what to do about it.
Well, when you went and you made your first adult film, how, like you mentioned being shy, how was your approach to getting women to not just be in these films, but participate sexually in these films? How would, especially with you being shy, how did you go about that?
Well, that actually worked to my advantage because I wasn't threatening to any of the girls, and as time went on, I mean, I realized that women like sex more than love sex probably more than men do. Men like to brag about it, but women are real, they're for sex.
Mm-hmm.
And but anyway, my shyness played to my advantage, and my first hardcore movie was the girl that was in it Bill would pick her up in I had an old Cadillac that had worn out brakes, and it was a rainy day, and I was still checking. I was had never shot a movie before, and I'm still in the apartment checking lights and what have you. And I said, Bill, go pick her up. And she had gotten off at a bus stop a mile away, and so he went to pick her up, and then when they got in the car and he started to come back, he forgot to pump the brakes, and he hit a little old lady crossing the crosswalk, but he managed to talk his way out of it, and we decided to shoot the girl the next day, and she agreed to come back, and we had a rental camera at that time, and so we had another half day. We could the camera was still available to us. Anyway, when she came in, and I said, her in one of my hot little outfits, and she was so excited, rolling around on the bed, that she pissed all over it, and I jumped into the bed with her, and we rolled around and fucked our brains out, and when Bill came in, he could smell the smell of urine all over the place. But and then the next girl, was, she was a very pretty girl, and there was an agency that was providing girls. There were two agents at that time, and then I had a couple other people that were finders, and but I never found I would always hire two girls at the same time. Each girl would do a single, and then I would have the girls do a little lesbian thing together. And I never had any girl say, no, I won't do a lesbian. Girls had no problem with doing lesbian sex. I might preface, I had done some modeling on my own for, nude modeling. I wrote Bill Rotzler and his people, and so I kind of had an idea was what to do, but so I two girls, and then the girl would be the third. They were called 400 16 millimeter film was a loop, and Bill Bill always would sell them. And they became nationally famous. We had a company down in Texas. What was his name? Anyway, was predicated on getting loops from us. And when Bill told him that we were thinking of switching to 30 millimeter, his henchman came up and stuck a gun in Bill's mouth and said, "You're going to keep shooting 16 millimeter." And I didn't understand the significance of that until years later when I learned, that he was making dollars a year from in his theater showing our loops.
Was this
so anyway?
Was this the same William Hunt that played Emperor Wang, the perverted?
Yeah, William Hunt, the one in Flesh Gordon.
Okay, so he was a shady individual then.
He was a what?
He was a shady individual then.
Well, he was a serious actor. He belonged to a group called the Company Theater, and they were, they did plays all the time, and and so he liked the idea of doing Flesh Gordon, but yeah, he was. I wouldn't call him shady, but he wasn't a prude or anything. He didn't have to be hardcore, but he just had to be a crazy character.
Well, he was certainly funny in this role, and I gotta wonder, because this is a porn parody. What was the reactions of Jason Williams and Suzanne Fields when they came on board for this film?
Oh, in the beginning?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, there was, attitudes were loosening up, and explained to Jason that he would have to do a little gay scene with Prince Precious, and I had used Susanna Fields. Cindy Stokes was actually her real name. I had used her in a loop before. And she was one of a real cutie and had a wonderful, bubbly personality. And unfortunately, she married. From what I hear, she married a supermarket guy after the movie came out, and she kind of kept her past to herself. So I didn't really look into it. I know that says they found her, and but I don't know if that's true or not. Jason and Jason gay scene with Precious, as long as he didn't have to show his face. I shot it overhead, looking down on him, and, so that there was never a problem. And all that were in it was a thrill to them to like I say, it took 3 years to make it, and they got the accolades after it came out, and so everybody was quite pleased with what they had done.
Okay. Well, I like a lot of the names you gave these characters, like Professor Jerkoff.
Dr. Jerkoff was Joe Hutchins.
Yeah.
He was from the Company Theater. He's a hell of a good actor.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who played the guards, they came marching into the Penosaurus cave. They were all from the Company Theater. Mm-hmm. And we got a lot of our crew was from the Company Theater. And Reb got, Candy Samples was, her real name was Mary Gavin.
I love that name, Candy Samples.
Yeah. Reb saw, found her, and, she was a bosomy young lady, and she did a hell of a job. And, and Mike Benvenisti, who did the live action directing, for the first part of the movie.
Okay.
he did a nice job. He came up with a lot of cute ideas, and it was just kind of as the project went on and on and on. He started to lose his concentration, and then after I hired a boss in to do the editing. I mean, a boss pointed out to me all the things that were missing, and I went back and had to reshoot a lot of stuff, and rebuild some of the sets, and I was looking at the thing on the camera one night, and I noticed that the monster, his mouth always moved, and the boss was just going to put growls in there, and I said, well, wait a minute, let's see if we can fit fit a voice into that, and give him a voice, and to Bill's credit, he still stayed in touch with the movie, and we had our parted ways. He was a big patron of the Comedy Store, and he came in with into the editing room night with Craig T. Nelson.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I thought that was really cool. You got him to voice this monster, and I'm glad you made that decision because I thought that scene was hysterical.
Well, yeah, that was sort of the highlight. That was sort of the highlight of the and Craig. I said he started just ad-libbing lines, and I said, well, wait a minute, this is so good, I don't want to take a chance of missing it. So I set up a little booth with furniture mats and what have you, and so he could be in a little sound booth right there in the editing room, and he wouldn't hear the rattling of the machine film, and Craig did the recording right there on the spot, and yeah, it turned out to be really special, especially the line when the monster goes, "Oh fuck."
Well, I gotta say, you got Judy Ziehm as Zurich.
Huh?
Judy's Ziehm as Zurich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Judy. Judy was speaking at a club called the Ball, shipping, and she was paying our bills, and she and I were living in a rental house, and Bill always managed to have a Rolls Royce and a nice house, and I never knew how the hell he afforded it, but he was always able to give a plausible answer. He made a super deal, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I was always too, clueless to say, look at what you're telling me it was a bit like the Trump investigation. It was, Bill could tell, could do something truthfully and tell a lie. He would always prefer the lie. Anyway, she comes home one night at 2:00 in the morning from her job at the Ball, and I'm sound asleep, and she said, yeah, some guy, Bill and I were starting a little theater chain. We had a movie house up in Boise. We had the one that Tarantino bought, and then we had another one called the Top Theater up in Boise, Idaho. Actually, it was a little town just outside of Boise called Caldwell. And Judy said, yeah, this guy was just told me he had seen, what was the famous porn movie that was the sensation of that.
The Last Tango in Paris?
No, the hardcore with the girl that did
Deep Throat.
Yeah, Deep Throat.
Okay.
And Deep Throat was making a ton of money wherever it played.
Mm-hmm.
and and I had been telling my animator, that we didn't have any money. I was paying them, partially, and I had a little note, I owe so that, blah blah blah, and then I hear that we're showing Deep Throat, and I said, oh no, that's impossible. If we were showing Deep Throat, Bill would tell me, because Deep Throat was making a ton of money, and I decided to check it out, and I got a Boise newspaper, and sure enough, there's an ad for Deep Throat playing the Top Theater, and I called the theater up, and Bill's parents working at the theater, and they didn't know me because I didn't. He built theaters, and I just involved in making the film, and I said, well, what are you playing now? And she said, oh, Deep Throat, and I said, how long has it been playing? She said, well, for 4 weeks. And I said, oh, okay, well. So I went in the next day, and I slapped the newspaper down on Bill's desk, and he's sitting in his office. It was hot as hell outside, but Bill had a big fur coat on, and he had this little Oriental girl who had been buying loops from us for Japan. And I had no idea what, and that was going on, and I went down to our theater downtown, Beverly Cinema, and we had a Mexican manager, and they never saw me because I never came down there, but, he said, oh, how, well, you want some money? And I said, why would you offering to give me some money? I mean, that money should be going right to the bank. Because we were thin finances, and so then I knew something seriously going on. That's what made the deal with the accountant to control everything until the film was done, and so it was kind of a long, nasty story, but. Somehow it all got done, and then here we are, 45 years later.
Yep.
And thanks to you, getting a little notice.
Oh yeah. Well, I wanted to talk about some of the creatures in this film, like the Penosaurus and that creature that goes up to the top of that building and grabs I'll get her name, Dale Ardor. Was that inspired by the seventh voyage of Sinbad?
Well, yeah, because those shots were done by Jim Danforth,
mm-hmm.
and Jim Danforth was considered the who was the famous puppet animator. Kind of losing my concentration here, but anyway, Jim Danforth is considered the best of the best. As a matter of fact, when I took the footage into Cinema Research to have some rays and things like that stuck on, they told me this is the best animation. Oh, Ray Harryhausen. This is the best animation I've seen since Ray Harryhausen. So we not only had Dennis Mirren, who won all the Academy Awards. We had Jim Danforth, and it was an amazing crew that we had together, and sort of put together by accident, and a little bit of serendipity, but they went together and they did a hell of a job.
Do you know if Ray Harryhausen saw the film?
Do I know of what?
If Ray Harryhausen saw the film.
Oh, Ray Harryhausen?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Ray Harryhausen might have been dead by that time, but I don't know.
No, Ray Harryhausen passed away in, I think it was 2013, if I remember correctly.
Oh, did he? Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Well, you're a better historian than I am. Oh, well, I would imagine he did.
Okay. Because I always loved his work as a stop motion animator.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
no, it was and when forth. I mean, that's very mentally straining work.
Mm-hmm.
And I know at one point Danforth blew up and said he couldn't take it anymore, and he left the film. And I had to go over to his house and get down on my hands and knees and beg him to come back on. And I guess I did a good job, because he said, "Oh, look, I'll come back," and he came back. But then then after the thing with Mike Miner, where Mike, they said they didn't like the film, and it was a little bit, they were thinking they were making Flash Gordon, and I kept writing them were making Flesh Gordon, and that was always a little bone of contention with them. But eventually, as Jason Williams recently told me that, Dennis, he didn't acknowledge that he worked on Flesh Gordon for a long time. Now he acknowledges it. So I guess they've got over it. And as I said, Mike Miner died of AIDS, so that was kind of tragic.
Okay. Where did you come up with some of the names of some of these, like the Penisauruses, Professor Jerkoff, even in the sequel, the Slimy Turd People and asteroids and stuff like that? Like, you come up with a lot of very funny names.
It's just kind of my sense of humor.
Yeah.
To a large degree. I mean, that's kind of me to who I am. I'm always calling people by nicknames that are a little off color, but it's just who I am. But yeah, the asteroids were that the parting asteroids, and so you saw the sequel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They had the King Schlong climbs up on top of the statue, the building in New York, and pisses on them as they're flying by, and and then we had the baby people and the turd people, and a lot of people got disturbed about the turd people. It was a little bit too much for some people.
Yeah, and of course you had another interesting villain, Master Bader.
Oh yeah, Master Bader. Yeah, that part was that was a friend of that was a acting friend of Joe Hutchins. And Bruce, what's his name? Bruce Scott. And anyway, Bruce did a hell of a job with that. I mean, but yeah, Master Bader, and
you have Morgan Fox playing Rubunda Hooters.
Rubunda Hooters. I wrote the second script with Doug Frisbee,
mm-hmm.
Who was I had met my brother playing golf, and suggested I talked to Doug, and Doug was a little bit of a shy character, but anyway he came up with a lot of stuff on his own, and everything was it was like sort of a community effort. I mean, a lot of people threw in ideas here and there.
Yeah, but Flesh Gordon and Dale Ardor were both played by different actors here. Maybe it's because of the timeline. You have Vince Murdocho as Flesh and Robin Kelly as Dale.
He was a Canadian kickboxing champion.
Mm-hmm.
And and Kelly, what's her name?
Robin Kelly.
Yeah, Robin Kelly. Yeah, she was a dancer, but we interviewed a lot of people up there. The second film was all shot up in Toronto,
Okay.
and we rented a big warehouse out in uh, outside of Toronto, and yeah, we had the spider, the weird spider and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, he had some interesting stuff in there. I noticed looking at your filmography, a lot of your films are in the 70s. You do Naughty Network, of course, you do in 1981, and then you don't do another one until Flesh Gordon Meets the Cosmic Cheerleaders in 90. What happened
Well,
in there?
to tell you the truth, I mean, yeah, people think pornography, like once you've seen it and done it, it kind of becomes old hat. I got to the point where, the thought of going and shooting a girl, doing a strip tease in front of the camera was just so boring to me
Mm-hmm.
that I couldn't go on with it anymore. And then after Peter Locke wanted to do some movies with me after Flesh Gordon, and I did that whole series, the sweet cakes and the hot cookies and what have you. But and I said, well, yeah, I'll as long as they meant challenging to me, I'll do them. But I don't want to do any little low key, nothing films. And and then I did Naughty Network. And when Naughty Network was sort of, we had shot some scenes with that Miller, the penthouse photographer,
Okay.
had shot he had agreed to do two scenes. I let him direct two scenes, and I was good friends with Earl Miller, and but we shot those in 35 millimeter, and but then the whole thing of making these sort of kind of it came to an end. I forget exactly why, but so we had this footage laying around, and quite a bit of money invested into those two scenes, $30,000, and so I thought I came up with an idea of a network, that I could incorporate those two Earl Miller scenes in that would work and be consistent.
Okay. Well, I noticed that you had pen names in some of these, or like Harry Hopper. Is that kind of a Dennis Hopper reference?
No, that was just that was when the police were chasing me around town, and I had been busted. I had been busted once, and and I realized it didn't behoove me to keep using my name because they were going to use it against me if we went to court. And actually, I when I did go to court, I totally lucked out. The DA was saying I'm going to get you 30 years and this and that, and but fortunately the judge in our case looked at the DA's name was Samoyan. He said, "Mr. Samoyan, I don't believe a single word any of your witnesses have said this morning." And his witnesses were actually it was a guy who had been busted for stealing something or whatever, and he made a deal with the cops to turn false evidence against me, for the benefit of the DA. And when I was shooting a movie up in Big Bear, Are you familiar with LA at all, or?
I've never been to LA, but I am familiar with Big Bear because I've interviewed a filmmaker who shot a movie up there within the last year.
Okay. Anyway, yeah, we were up in a Christmas movie up in Big Bear, and one of the actresses that was supposed to movie, she was going to drive up from L.A. And Erskine was supplying. He was the agent for her agent for the substitute, and he sent the all up, and I just assumed that he had her ID and what have you. So I didn't, I didn't question anything, and married and had a full-breasted body and this and that, but anyway, I had a bad habit. Not a bad habit, it was a fun habit. If a guy could hard on, I always put in and did the the stiff dick insertion, so we, and then we shoot a close up of my dick, and in editing it would just look like it was the actor doing that. Anyway, he was sort of pissed off at me because I had done a substitution scene with his girlfriend, who was a very pretty girl. Anyway, then so then he tells the cops that when Patty was the girl, when she came, he warned her that she was underage, and it doesn't matter. And I just passed it off, and which was totally untrue. Nothing like that happened at all. But that was what the DA was basing his case on. So they had charged me with pandering, oral copulation, oral copulation and statutory rape. And the statutory rape was that I had sex with Patty. Anyway, so when the judge said, "Look, I'm throwing the whole case out," it was kind of a big moment for me. And after that was one of the reasons I kind of got out. Well, it was getting crowded, and also it was, the people who were making porn were, it was getting sleazier and sleazier. I didn't mind the sleazy part, but when they started sticking, double penises into a girl's, I knew girls enjoy doing anal sex, and because I had rented our house out to shoot, other people shot movies in our house. And I had several instances where the actress complained that she had to do sex or asked the room to be cleared out when she was going to do an anal scene. And so when I'm seeing that somebody saying, the anus is the new vagina, I knew it was bullshit, and the girls were paid extra money to smile and act like they were enjoying. But in reality, I knew that they weren't.
That's what I'm hearing about that topic, that women do not enjoy it.
Well, no, they don't enjoy it, and it's like anything. If you pay a girl enough money, I don't know how much they paid these girls, but I imagine they were getting at least $1,000 or whatever to do an anal scene, and they. I noticed, I find it erotic myself. When I go on the internet, I'll look at anal porn, but, I notice it starts out with the girl with a butt plug, and then they pull out the butt plug, so she's already stretched out, and then you can do the anal scene, and, and I have a good friend, Angie Meyer. She's a very pretty girl. She also works under the name Angie Venus when she does hardcore, and and she's doing anal all the time. But it never looks like she's enjoying it. Or, I don't know. You never can tell.
Well, here's something that I always found curious about porn, and it's guys who have wives or girlfriends involved in it and how they cope with it. Do they enjoy the fact that their significant other is involved in this, or is there issues? Any stories you hear about this?
No, most of the guys, if they're well, okay. Look at I know Serena had a boyfriend, a guy named Thomas. He was a doper, and she would work with him, and I had booked her to do a scene for me in one of my films, and he came and he was so fucked up, he couldn't get it up, and so I had to have her come back the next day, and after he'd went to bed and straightened out a little, but yeah, I mean, I know a lot of guys. It didn't really. I'm sure some of them did. And like that guy. The guy turned me in up in Big Bear.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he had a problem with me doing a substitution with his. But a lot of these guys would agree to it. I mean, I would always ask the girl, is that okay with you? And I would ask the guy, is that okay with you? And I always got, they made them say yes. They had no problem before I did my bit. But so in general, like I say, the women. When it came to sex, the women were much more open about it and loose about it. I had a girlfriend. I mean, she's still a little Danish girl,
Mm-hmm.
who became my mistress, and and we used to get together once a week, and when I first hooked up with Judy, I said, when she wanted to move in with me, I told her right up in front. I said, well, look at, porno movies, so you can't be shocked that I'm going to have sex with some of these girls once in a while, because it's just part of the scene, and she never had a problem with it. In fact, she went on to do some porn movies on her, older and anal and that kind of thing. She shocked me. She shot there was a series of called Older and Anal, and she did a scene with them, and then she's been in some of the over 40 magazines, and you might have seen her picture if you got my book, or you'll see her in there.
Let's talk about your book, because we haven't really touched on that, and I'm somebody that's going to get this book. There's a real clash in our culture about censorship, and I can get it I can understand it with junk like Cannibal Holocaust, or something like that. But I really,
what was I think?
I really hate the fact censorship. For example, you get these right-wing groups. I mentioned Movie Guide. I think they suck ass, but trying to push their agenda and have things all family friendly. I'm sorry, I don't have kids and I don't want any. So it's like they have a problem with people who are single or couples who are who don't want kids, and
Well, yeah, you and me and Bill Maher.
yeah, and it's like they frown, and I find this the church is guilty of this. They frown on sex if it's not about procreation, which I think is clearly screwed up.
Well, you know what's ironic about the whole thing? You know, area of the country watches the most porn movies, the Deep South,
Okay.
and the other is Utah. I had a situation when the feds had busted a porn movie, and they wanted to make sure they got a conviction, and so they held the trial in Utah, and they were shocked to find out that the community standard in Utah was much more liberal than they had imagined. So they didn't get the conviction that they were hoping for.
Yeah, well, if I like, I grew up in a Christian home, and I'm Christian myself. But it's funny because when I hear these people pushing this family film or PureFlix junk, it's funny when you take, for instance, when David sees Bathsheba bathing. I'm sorry, but if that is shot realistically, she's gonna be shown. She's not gonna be wearing a bathing suit. She's gonna be have her tits out and everything. You're gonna see everything, and I find that they lose sight of that so quickly.
Yeah, well, that is ironic, isn't it? Because the more you read passages of the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
it's really ridiculous. I mean, how they can twist heads around the contradictions is hard to believe, but they do it. I read a thing in Timothy the other day. I don't remember what it was, but I mean, I see a lot of it on the internet. People will quote the Bible, and a lot of people, the whole attitude towards sex. I mean, once you've seen a people fucking and a naked body and a naked this or that, you can only watch it so many times before it gets boring, or it's not that it's boring, but you're not obsessed to see.
Okay.
Like I was when I first started. I mean, I had to go steal magazines and whatever just to see papers and magazines and whatever. But my wife sent me for a copy of a book that we used to have years ago. She paid $250 for it. It was called Carnival Strippers.
Okay.
Somehow it disappeared. She bought it again, and I just started reading some of the little pieces, and the girls all talk about how looking at the guys drooling, as men go. Do it myself. I mean, I still, if I don't go to strip places anymore, but when I did, I mean, that was very exciting. But then, you 1 week, and then you wouldn't go again for another month. So as time goes on, I mean, it's exciting, and you still enjoy doing it, but you're not obsessed to doing it.
Well, it's interesting when going back to the Bible, the Song of Solomon or Song of Songs is probably the most sexually descriptive book in the Bible. There's no mention of procreation. I think I've heard that preached only once in my life. And it's almost like it's one of those books that they don't want to talk about because it's not about procreation. It's actually about straight out sex. I'm not familiar with what you're talking about, but I can believe it. I mean, you look at passages in I always say, like most of the things that when you hear somebody preaching and on the TV or whatever, I mean, they're always quoting Psalms or some other, they have their favorite
little piece that they go on and on about. But hey, look at the whole thing with racism and slavery on on manipulating these tribal issues.
Mm-hmm. Well, this book, how long did it take you to write it?
3 years.
3 years, and would you say it's over 600 or over 700 pages?
Well, yeah, it's a little over 700 pages, but if you take out the pictures and everything, it's about 600 and something.
Oh, wow. So tell us what we can expect in this book. Whet my appetite, because I am going to order this. Give me the preview.
Well, you're going to get a like the fellow from Austria gave a nice quote. He said, this is a fascinating portrait of an era that brought about immense moral and social change.
Mm-hmm.
And that's I always had black friends. Little on, going to grade school and whatever. So I never had, and when I went to Berkeley, it was sort of the first, place where, I saw women, had no problems going out with black guys, or especially as time went on. One of the when I first started making porno movies, a lot of girls would say to me, I don't do anal and I don't fuck niggers. And now they all do. They all fuck niggers. To be really incorrect about the way I'm saying that, but interracial sex is fascinating.
Yeah. Then something else that's coming out a lot now is cartoon porn. And I know
what's that?
Cartoon porn. I'm hearing.
Oh, yeah.
I know somebody that's into this. I do like Fritz the Cat. I've had.
Well, that was a classic.
Yeah, I've had Ralph Bakshi on here a couple times.
Yeah, Bashki.
Yeah, but this idea of creating and I'm not talking just straight out cartoons, but cartoon characters that people know of in sexual situations. This I find funny, and I'm seeing a lot of that now as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I see that on the internet all the time. People will do. Well, our mom did. What was his? He did the Bible or whatever. According to R. Crumb, I forget what he called it. You're familiar with R. Crumb?
Yep, I am. He did. I did the Fritz the Cat.
Yeah.
Strip,
so,
yep.
You can't get much. When he did it, I don't know how you could do any better.
And of course, porn spoofs. Some of the titles are hysterical. Like Foreskin Gump.
Oh yeah. Well, look at. Yeah, coming up with the titles is the easiest part of it.
Patriot Dames, some of these titles are hysterical, and I think it kind of makes it a little amusing. I am not what you would call an avid porn watcher, but I'm no prude, But some of the creativity that goes into some of these ones that do a take on movies is very, very much amusing to me.
Well, yeah, I think they're amusing to almost everybody. It's like, because what you have is this topic, and all you have to do is twist words, and you turn, something, when I did a little talk about Flesh Gordon at the theater, point was, this isn't, this isn't. It's just ludicrous. All those monsters in Flesh Gordon. It's ludicrous. And that's why it's funny.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever get to do the convention scenes? Like Comic-Con or any of the conventions? You ever get to do
Well,
panels?
yeah, right now I'm sort of losing the ability to walk. I have to use a walker to get around.
Okay.
And so my wife has to drive me to wherever I go. As a matter of fact, Angie invited me down to the AFM, American Film Market. She had a booth down there,
Mm-hmm.
but I was unable to go because I'm just unable to walk that
Okay.
far.
Okay. Well, here's a question I ask all my guests. What's the most interesting thing you've ever been asked to sign?
Asked to sign.
Mm-hmm. Like autograph.
Oh, well, basically, I get people ask me to sign posters and books and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not signing baseballs or anything like that.
Well, what do you think the future is in terms of censorship? Like they're talking about the internet, and I just did a thing on my YouTube channel where the question was asked, is this kid friendly or is it for adults? And of course I click for adults because with people I interview, like I don't interview people for kids, and I don't aim to entertain kids. I don't even like seeing kid movies for the most part.
Yeah, well, I guess Facebook has gotten to be very prudish, and I've been, every once in a while they'll censor me, and and the problem with Facebook, they don't tell you what it was that you said that was so problematic to them. But that's just the way it is, I guess.
Yeah. Have you ever had problems with when Flesh Gordon was released of it being banned anywhere?
No, for Flesh Gordon, it's played all over the world. In fact, recently played up in Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan. Okay.
And it's played all across North America, all over Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows where Japan. So I just saw somebody sent me a review a French guy did on Flesh Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
And my Austrian said it's amazing how the French can make anything sound artistic.
What I find funny is the problems with censorship now, because I remember in 1971. Well, I wasn't alive then, but I know the controversy. A Clockwork Orange, Straw Dogs, Dirty Harry, even they were banned in various places in the world. Yet 30 years later, Freddy Got Fingered comes out and only gets an R rating. And you want to talk about a film that should have been banned places? That was one.
Yeah.
I find it's very lenient today, censorship, especially the stuff you see on television, and then you hear about some of these horror films that they can't even get an uncut version on Blu-ray because of the MPAA and the miserable FCC at the time.
Well, yeah, I watch a lot of stuff on Netflix, and some of it is so, some of it is right on the borderline, but it's not pornographic, but it's it's hard to, like I say, the general attitude. That's why the right wing keeps screaming about liberal, whatever they want to call us, and most people, most people aren't the prudes that they. That's why I said we ain't in the Garden of Eden no more.
Mm-hmm.
And so to make it sound like this stuff is so horrible it can't be watched. You look at South Park. Good God.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they go way out. So, I hope it doesn't. I think Trump is on the way out. I think things are gonna. Well, we're gonna have this battle. Who knows what's going to happen with him? But he's so weird and distorted.
Well, what I find is that you get these watchdog groups that are trying to tame everything down so kids can watch it. And I'm like, I'm one of these people, I don't need some asshole telling me what I can and cannot watch on my television or on my computer or whatever, I like R-rated films. I'm not particularly keen on G-rated films. For the most part, there are exceptions to the rule. But
yeah, well, I'm with you. I mean, exactly. If I see something rated, R or X, I'm fascinated by it. But
yep.
What's the point of? I'm not quite sure what it is that is so. Like I say, when Facebook censors me, I have no idea what they're censoring me for. I mean, I have my opinions about a lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't consider myself. I'll say stuff that maybe certain religions might find, problematic, but basically, I have a problem with the evangelicals because I don't understand what their point. If they're going to be raptured, why don't you just go ahead and get raptured and leave the rest of us alone? But anyway,
I always point out the Passion of the Christ, which I actually enjoyed. That
was a wonderful film.
It came so close to an NC-17, which was formerly the X rating. I don't hear Christians or evangelicals going off about that.
Well, you look at the Passion of the Christ, and I always say, well, look at they beat that boy so badly,
mm-hmm.
To get him to change his mind, and he wouldn't.
No.
And so what was their point? And when you look at the whole thing with with every religion says they're the one true religion, and somebody fellow living with us now, a homeless guy, and he kind of sits in and watches TV all day. But he pointed out to me the other day, well, Christ was born into, that's what the whole thing with the three wise men was all about. They brought him, mirth and perfume and whatever.
Mm-hmm. No, I enjoyed the Passion, very well done, but it's one that I always fire back at them, and it's like, because I cannot stand these Kirk Cameron, these. They want to do movies for Christians, Pureflix does, and yet the movies suck ass. They're not very good. You get these evangelicals or these movie guide idiots out there that say, slap 4 stars on these things and say they're excellent. Basically, they don't seem to understand that the Bible talks about dishonesty, which I think they're doing.
Well, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I always said, thou shalt. I know that some of these senators, Planned Parenthood is all about abortion. Well, it's not all. 90% of it is just about women's health. So, if you're saying it's all about abortion, you're a liar.
And they got that shit. There's a film that came out this year called Unplanned. We didn't get it here, and of course, if you see the way they portray the people at Planned Parenthood, it's laughable. It's laughable because they say it's based on a true story, and you watch this, and it's like, there's no way this was said. There was no way this happened. This is bullshit. And anybody that argues with it, they could go hide in their closet somewhere.
Well, yeah, well, that's what their whole premise is bullshit. I always ask, well, how come God only had one son? Well, what is he using birth control? Was he gay? What's that all about? Did he have a wife? Well, why isn't she? Did he consult with her before he gave his only son away? There's so many contradictions into the whole premise. And then of course the Muslims are just Muhammad rose on his big white horse into the heavens. In every religion, if you look at it long enough, I mean, it's all mysticism and magic and Harry Potter stuff.
Yeah, well, I do know we're all gonna pass on, so I mean, I stand by what I believe. I believe in the Bible, but I do not believe in what some of these evangelicals are going about trying to
well, they
push
carry
their.
it too far.
Yes, they do. I agree.
And if other people want to believe in this or that, that's their own business.
Yeah.
Who cares? But if you're like saying, start making up these stories about being raptured. We've had people here in L.A. A guy 2 or 3 years ago, he had his little group standing on the side of on the sidewalk, about 7 or 8 of them, and he had them convinced that they were going to be raptured at 3:00 in the afternoon, and they were standing there waiting.
Yeah, well, it also says in the Bible you don't know the time or the hour, so maybe they didn't read that part of it.
Yeah.
I did want to ask one more thing about Flesh Gordon is because I haven't looked this up, but Jason Williams, I guess Suzanne Fields probably does. You mentioned kind of left the business, but Jason Williams, is he still around? Is he still?
Jason?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a book out called "I Was Flesh Gordon."
Okay, I did not know this.
Yeah, and I haven't read it, but I know Christian Ginzel read it and said it was very good. But
Okay.
yeah, he basically he came from the side of the story that what it was like for him to you would find it interesting because that's would answer a lot of the questions you asked. What's it like for somebody who's not in? He wasn't a porno guy per se, or at all, but he agreed to do the movie.
What about Suzanne? How did she take doing these scenes?
Well, like I say, I don't. She just sort of. She had no problem.
Okay.
She was one of the first. I had shot her just in doing before porno came out. So I had shot her before, and so I just liked her personality. She was a very cute little girl and little bubble butt ass, and nice firm tits, and she was a cutie.
And what about Vince Murdocho and Robin Kelly? They still in the scene anymore?
Well, Vince is still around, and I tried to look up to see what Kelly, Robin Kelly was, but I couldn't find her on the internet. I'm sure she's around, but I had brought her down to L.A. I had a friend who was an agent, and I was hoping he could help her get into the business, but he a bit of a it's a hard thing to break into the. You read how these people get into the business, and it's never easy.
No. Well, what have you been doing with yourself since Flesh Gordon too? Like like
Well, I write Facebook posts every day, and I always have something to say about something, and uh, I've created quite a good little following.
Well, I love the fact that you're very outspoken, and you're very direct, and you stand by what you did. And I found Flesh Gordon to be hilarious, So I'm not judging you for it. I quite frankly, I prefer to watch that than just a straight out porno. I mean, it's fun to laugh at something, And how many times do you see a creature say the word "fuck"?
Yeah, well, the fact that it's hung on for 45 years, and like I say, I still get a nice royalty check from my distributor. Not a fortune, but substantial. So I guess people are still buying it.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course it's out on Blu-ray as well. I
Yeah,
just discovered this, and that's another thing I have got to get hold of is the Blu-ray of
yeah.
Flesh Gordon. Do you do any commentary tracks or anything on these?
Well, yeah, I do have a commentary track on just the regular version, and I'm assuming I haven't ever listened. I've got the Blu-ray copy here, but I don't. I think I imagine that the commentary track is also on it.
Okay. Yeah, because I love those.
Yeah, well, a
Yeah.
lot of people have said the commentary was more interesting than the movie, but you know, maybe they're right. So anyway,
Well, yeah, they get details about penisauruses.
yeah, exactly. Well, we got into a lot of stuff today, so
Yes, we did. You know what? It was a pleasure and honor having you come on here today. I do apologize that some of the feedback, and I think it was on your end, was a bit scratchy today. You might find that you come in and out a little bit
well,
throughout
I'm
the
on
inter-
on a handheld
Okay.
phone,
Yep.
but maybe that's why.
Well, but I could definitely understand what you're saying. You're coming in pretty clear, but I thought I would give you a heads up on that. So because I know you said you was recording this interview as well, and I hope you're not disappointed. But I found the interview very insightful, and it was an honor having you on. And I'd be delighted to have you on again next year. After I got into this book, 'cause, I'm gonna order this thing. I gotta read this.
Okay, Greg. Well,
Yeah,
I look forward to talking to you again. And if I'm
absolutely.
around, I'll do another interview for you whenever you would like.
Yeah. Before I let you go, would you mind doing a plug for my show?
Oh, sure.
Right.
Okay, this is Howard Ziehm. You've been listening to Greg Gilbert's Python's Paradise, coming to you from New Brunswick, Canada.
You ever been out this way before?
Hmm?
Have you ever been to New Brunswick, Canada before?
Well, no, I had never been to New Brunswick, but I've been to Newfoundland.
Okay, that's close enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we got the chilly weather here right
Oh,
now, but
yeah. I know.
yeah,
Yeah, and we're in a heat wave.
yeah, I know. I find it funny what you guys find cold and what we find cold.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Radically different.
Yeah, I heard you guys put on the heavy coats when it's 65 degrees, and we're like, we rarely.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right about that.
Well, we rarely hit those stages here. We're getting into that below zero weather here.
Oh, yeah. I know.
Yeah, that's one of those harsher realities here in Canada.
Well, my wife's father moved from. They were from Vermont, and he finally just couldn't take it anymore, and he moved to Florida. But he died several years ago. But yeah, he had it with the cold weather.
Well, Howard, thank you so much for coming on here and celebrating the 45th anniversary of this bizarre movie, Flesh Gordon.
Okay, well, thank you for having me, and It's been my pleasure to talk to you.
Absolutely. Stay in touch, and I'll get this to you when it's ready.
Okay, thanks, Greg.
You take care.